blood. Keep away from it! Something in the blood.
The devastation spread, and the world he knew was gone.
No! No! No!
He thinks he's alone, but he's not.
I wake up today in hospital.
28 days later.
Welcome back to the Cinema Club podcast. My name is Christopher Amick, and I will be your host for today's episode. The Cinema Club is like a book club, but for movies. Every episode, we invite members of the Cinema Club to be co-hosts for the episode, who choose the television show or movie, and join us in the podcast to talk about that film or show. And today, I am joined by Mark Evenson and Adam Cheatham. Glad to be back with both of you today.
Hey, happy to be here. Always happy to talk some movies.
Absolutely. And yeah, today's movie is 28 Days Later, which, Mark, we were discussing recording another episode for the podcast. And I was like, hey, throw out some films that you'd be down to discuss. And you threw out 28 Days Later. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do that one, because it was on my to-watch list. But had you seen it before, Adam, or is this your first time doing it as well?
So I actually experimented here.
Okay.
We previously set up to watch this
Yes.
or to do this like a month ago. And my plan, I enacted it today, was to wait about 4 hours before we did a podcast, watch the movie, and then talk about it. So I just watched it like an hour ago.
Real
So
fresh.
I have the super fresh perspective.
That's good,
Freshest
though.
I can have.
Yeah.
Downside of that is I don't have a lot of notes because I like to have notes for podcasts prior,
Right.
but that's okay.
No, it's definitely okay. Yeah, for context, for already listening, we had originally been planning to record this a month ago, but my daughter was actually born the day we were planning to record. So now we're here 4 weeks later. I have not rewatched the film. So it's been 5 weeks since I've seen it, but it's let me think about it on the other hand, a little bit different way, let it settle in a little bit longer. But Mark, since this was the film that you brought to the table, do you have any special connection to this film, or is it just a film that you just are gung-ho about diving into tonight?
Okay, cards on the table, right? I honestly think this is the second most important zombie film ever made. Okay.
Wow.
Night of the Living Dead's the first. It's the most important, right? If it wasn't for that film, we wouldn't have modern zombie movies. 28 Days Later, it was plague zombies. It was running zombies. The people weren't actually dead yet. It was set in the UK when everything had always been set in the US. That movie happened. And then you get Shaun of the Dead. You get the remake of Dawn of the Dead. You get an explosion immediately after that film came out. And Resident Evil helped. I'm not going to lie. The Resident Evil film helped. But after 28 Days Later, there was an absolute explosion of zombie books and movies that came out. And if you look at the timelines on a lot of zombie films, they all came out after 2002. It was funny because we had the Resident Evil games, right? I think it was up to Resident Evil 3 at that point. They just did the first Resident Evil movie. That was fun. It was great. Come on, Mia Jovovich. I thoroughly enjoyed that movie. But then 28 Days Later came out and it was a kick in the pants. I enjoyed it quite a lot.
I'm guessing then it was critically enjoyed as well. I was looking at Rotten Tomatoes today, and it has an 87% critic score and 85% audience score. Like you said, it kickstarted the love for zombie films again.
I mean, we'd make fun of the fact you can tell it was in the UK because nobody had guns, right? So we'd make fun of stuff like that. And we're like, you can tell this didn't happen in the US. How's that? They didn't have guns. It was a thing. But really, nobody I knew in my age group at that time in my friend circle, nobody disliked it. If they liked zombie movies, they enjoyed it. They had a great time. They had recommended it to friends.
Awesome. And I was excited about diving into 28 Days Later as well, because it stars Naomi Harris and Cillian Murphy. And he's just phenomenal actor in so many things that I really enjoy. And then is directed by Danny Boyle, which, to be honest with you, I haven't seen too many of his films, but Alex Garland, I believe, was the main writer on 28 Days Later. And he's involved in Dread, which the three of us have covered on this podcast before.
That was my first episode.
Yeah, exactly. And I believe he's heavily involved in the new Civil War film releasing.
Oh, I'm interested on that one.
Oh, so he's actually the director and writer of that movie.
Oh, both. Okay.
And there's actually a story that came out like a week ago that after filming this movie, he is now retired as a director.
Oh, did he say why just lost love for filmmaking?
So I haven't found the exact reason. It might be out there somewhere on the interwebs, but all I know is for a fact he has retired from directing after this movie. He is still a writer. He is a writer for a movie to be announced for a release date 28 years later. And he's also the writer for another movie. It looked like a video game adaptation called Warframe. He's still living the good life, but he is no longer directing ever again.
He also did a film, I don't know if he's a writer-director, of Ex Machina.
Oh, sure. With both director and writer.
I was not ready for that film whatsoever.
That film.
And from the Star Wars geek, seeing Domhnall Gleeson as, again from Dread, but General Hux as the good guy and Oscar Isaac as the bad guy, it was a little interesting.
It was
an outstanding film.
Speaking of just like film in general, not to like go off on too many bunny trails, but it relates the 28 Days Later. So I've been doing a binge rewatch of the Planet of the Apes films. So nice. I just got through the 5 original films, and so now I'm going to start up the new trilogy of the Apes movies, and I'm doing all this in preparation for the new film releasing in May.
The original films, like the Charlton Heston film?
Yeah, I love those films.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's been a long time since I saw that movie. Did I ever see 4? I know I saw 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, yeah, 4 is the one where Caesar takes over. But I just have a love for those films, man. My wife was like, what is this? And their budget seems to go down progressively. By the time you're watching the 5th film, they shot like the same exploding tree, like with 15 different angles. And then they just showed that same tree exploding in this whole battle scene. So quality production wise definitely goes down as you watch those films, but classic films, it relates a little bit to this film because, 20 Days Later, it opens up with chimp experimentation. And I know it's always something that's been really interesting / disturbing to me is experimentation on animals, but especially primates. Also, I think has that messaging in there a little bit where it's like, fuck around and find out when it comes to science, because basically these chimps are just little rage machines. These activists are like, oh no, we're going to come in here and do the right thing, help these animals out. And that's how this all starts.
They don't pull any punches at the beginning of the film. You see the ape sitting there with the screens and the wires to its head. And you're like, what the hell did I walk into? I thought this was zombies. What's going on?
Yeah, that was my thought process as well, Mark. What are you getting me into here?
But no, the animal handling was very well done in there. The actors and actresses, the responses, you can tell it's a well-crafted film just in that tight little bit. And the violence when it happens, it's unexpected and it's there, but it's also not. They actually did a really good job of cutting it and focusing on the humans versus the animal actors. But yeah, it's violent and boom, there it is. It's done.
Throws you in on the deep end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when the scene opened, as it was going on, I remember slowly piecing together what was going to happen. Understand? Monkeys. They're going, oh no. And then once I had that realization, I was just on pins and needles. Oh my God, it's going to happen anytime now.
And how quickly it spread. And I think that was a key point is because she gets hit, they get the ape off of her. She coughs, she attacks, she vomits, sneezes blood on him, and it just snowballed. And it was very unlike previous zombie movies because you get bit, you fall over, you die. An hour later, you stand up.
This was instant.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Mark. Later on in the film, we get that verbal confirmation. It's like, oh yeah, 10, 20 seconds. Terrifying.
I didn't even think about that, but in past zombie movies, and even in zombie movies past 28 Days Later, a big plot point in zombie movies is like someone getting bitten, but making it a secret to the group. And usually that's this elongated thing. But in this movie, you're bit, you have maybe 40 seconds. And decisions have to be made right then and there, or you are on the negative end of a zombie attack.
Which is important because one of the problems with the original zombie movies is, and they actually cover it quite well near the end of Night of the Living Dead, all the local hunters get together and just start shooting zombies. And pretty much in that film, it's contained. The second film, it obviously isn't. Not the remakes, because that's an important distinction, although the color remake was good. How do zombies make it from Tucson to Phoenix? Because if they walk, they're going to die because it's the desert, right? If they're living. If they're dead, that's a different conversation. But that's a serious amount of time for it to travel from place to place. And even inside of a normal city in the suburbs, there should be time for you to be able to evacuate, which you do see in the original Day of the Dead movies, Romero movies. This one, we're talking a small country. We're talking there's a lot of towns and cities, and we're talking instantaneous. And it's a much more believable scenario than guy dying, getting up a day later and walking over to his neighbor's house.
Yeah, definitely. Skipping ahead here in the film a little bit, but when Selena kills Mark, I thought at first when she's grabbing a machete or something, she was going to cut off Mark's arm. And she like fully just straight up hacks him to death.
Yeah.
And I was like, "God damn."
Oh,
Like-
that was brutal.
I do think it was purposefully set up to make you think, oh, she's just going to dismember him. And then
You think so too?
What?
Okay.
I think it was set up for the audience to feel that way. And then you're like shocked to realize, oh no, she just killed him.
Brutally killed this
Because
guy.
I remember having a similar feeling. I was like, she can just dismember him, right? And then she didn't stop. And I was like, oh my God.
But it made her a much more powerful character because
Yeah.
we don't know if Mark was bit or not, right? We don't. We don't know
No.
if there was fluid transfer. There is chance that there was fluid transfer even if he wasn't bit, but we don't know, right? But the fact that she was willing to just snicker snack him that quick.
Yeah, there was no thought. I remember how swift all that happened. And if I'm being transparent, I was getting attacked. I was like, oh, this guy seems interesting. How is his story gonna unfold throughout the rest of this? And I obviously didn't get a fully realized character, but that's what made it more shocking. And I guess it didn't really feel like any character was armor necessarily.
Actually, that's something we want to talk about at the end of the film. I don't want to skip that far ahead.
We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah, sorry I jumped ahead there
We
on
all
that
did.
topic. Yeah. But Mark, when you were talking about this film having an impact on zombie genre, when our main character awakes in the hospital, it very much, at least for me, reminds me of The Walking Dead, where Rick Grimes wakes up in the hospital. And I was like, oh, shit, you're saying very impactful to this whole film genre.
Oh, they straight up lifted it for Walking Dead, especially if you read the comics.
I'm only exposed to the TV show. I was curious in the original story, does he wake up in a hospital? Because if not, then oh my God.
So that whole beginning where Rick gets injured isn't in the comics. You literally, first page, there's Rick lying in a hospital bed. And I'm like, come on, really? Because it was just straight up lifted. But in the comic, of course, Walking Dead, he does find the possibility of zombies before he's out of the hospital. He decides not to go into a room. And they did cover that very well, I thought, in the show. But yeah, that straight up opening, they straight up lifted it out 28 days later.
That is fascinating.
And I also think Rick losing his arm because Mark died. I think they put that piece in because of how impactful Mark's death was, since we're going back to skipping way too far ahead. But no, 28 Days Later obviously had a very big influence on at least the first dozen comics of The Walking Dead, I'd say.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And you talked about it too, Mark, but this is one of the first fast running zombie genre films as well, which, I mean,
That became a staple afterwards.
World War Z.
Man,
the
Absolutely
remake of Dawn of the Dead.
Because you're like, oh, this is my one upper hand is I'm fast. And these mofos are slow. Nope.
and out of all the imagery in the world, a zombie full sprinting to you is, I don't know, I feel like my heart is speeding up just thinking about it. Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not going to go into guns, but again, they don't have guns. Like the opening sequence outside of the hospital, or once he wakes up and he's walking around and there's no water, he finds a broken soda machine. The opening sequence in the city where somehow they shut down London, that filming just blows my mind. You don't
Yeah.
see people, like maybe 3 cars, maybe 4 cars total. That was amazing to see. And I was, in subsequent viewings, I was looking to see the CGI, and you can catch it a couple times, but in general, it's outstanding. I don't know how they were able to film that opening sequence.
I was gonna.
Very cool.
I haven't looked too much into it, but I was super curious on how a lot of the shots were made to make some very prominent areas look so vacant. And I was hoping there was like a documentary or something that just went into detail about it, because I don't know. It was like pretty crazy, some of the shots they were able to make for that.
Yeah.
Specifically that opening segment.
Which I actually want to bring up the soundtrack before I forget. Man, they did good on the soundtrack. As he's wandering around and he's finding piles of money, he's finding all this stuff, and the music just gets soft, and it's got this hammering beat to it that just gets louder and louder. Till I think it's when he gets to Piccadilly Circus, I think is what it's called, where there's all the missing signs, and then the music just ends. And I can feel my muscles tensing thinking about it, hearing it in my head. It was very well done. And throughout the entire film, whenever there's music, it is right. And that's good.
Yeah, I think we've talked on the podcast in the past about how music really is a make or break aspect of a film. And I would agree totally with you, Mark. Like the music here really does do a nice job of adding to the ambience and emotion happening on screen. I guess then we would chronologically have the church scene.
Which
First intro.
apparently it was a real church that was like in normal use. And the pastor, the father, or whatever, came in and saw the painting on one of the stairways that says the end is extremely fucking nigh, and looked at it, sighed, turned around and walked out. And then they repainted it, obviously. But the church scene was horrifyingly wonderful.
Especially, I think, in society, a lot of people look towards churches as being these safe havens in times of trouble, right? So to, again, emotionally impact our main character with the severity of the situation, going to this church, it's this building that can be representative of a safe haven, and then to have that usher in our introduction of the zombies, I think really, again, emotionally is hitting home the intensity of what's happened in the UK.
And it's also the first time bodies, period. You do not see bodies anywhere in the opening sequence of the film, out in the streets anywhere. You see a flipped over car. You don't see dead people until you're in the church. And the first time I was watching it, I was like, what the heck is that all over the pews? Is that people? And then it turns out that it is. But again, good crafting. You know, you take something so deserted, it should be safe, and there's piles of dead. It's disturbing. It's good.
Yeah.
Then he yells hello. The priest comes out, and the priest running at him while looking like he's having a seizure. It definitely hits the uncanny valley. And he swings, he hits him in the head with the cans. The priest goes down and he's, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And then he starts getting chased. And just how terrifying that had to have been. The whole experience at this point is just the slow building terror, and then unexpected terror, and safety's not there. And then a priest is coming after you. I mean, it's a good way to get people creeped out.
Yeah, all the norms of society are completely gone in the first 10 minutes of him walking around.
Yeah.
And then if I remember correctly, so he's running away then, and that's when he encounters the two other characters, Selena and Mark. And they're like, what do you mean you don't know what's going on? Last month, he had some kind of surgery or something on his brain,
he's
because
got
like
a
he was like
big old
shaved and
scar
everything.
on his noggin. It's a big U-shaped scar.
Yeah.
He was a bicycle courier. He got hit by a car. He wakes up a month later. He never
There we
should
go.
have woke up because he was out of IVV. He wasn't being fed. Actually, I want to comment on that. The fact we start off the movie. Here's our main character, buck ass naked.
Oh yeah, like it's like an aerial shot.
Full frontal nudity. it was nice because it shows this character at his absolute most vulnerable, waking up with no idea what's going on. He has no clue what's happening to him. It's a great way to establish the character, his vulnerability. How much more vulnerable can we make somebody on screen?
Right.
And with the US, you don't get full frontal male nudity like ever. So it was one of those things where this is not a US movie. And that was nice.
It's definitely interesting how, like you're mentioning, Mark, different areas of the world viewed things differently. But yeah, no, I definitely was like, it's probably not a US film just from that one opening shot. But yeah, like you said, it's a very vulnerable state that our main character is immediately in, and then he's running around in his gown that we picked up in the hospital.
Yeah, he grabs some scrubs. Yeah, so he then meets our companions, and they're scary looking. They've got gas masks on. They're throwing Molotov cocktails. They blow up a gas station, and then they take him into a subway, into a mini market. And he finds out the world
thought the exploding gas station was maybe a wee bit overkill, or no.
Apparently, they actually bought a gas station to blow up, and the gas station was not in the city. Okay. And they had one shot. So like that tree we were joking about earlier, where they filmed the tree from 20 different angles. That's why the explosion was done, because dude, that literally was their special effects money shot for the movie.
Wow.
Hearing them talk about it's outstanding. It was good.
I'm looking at their budget, and I know it was more independent.
It was like $8
million for the budget, and they managed to slip in blowing up a
real gas station.
That's impressive, and still paying your actors. Wow.
And stopping traffic in London.
Right. Yeah, it was nothing. I think they go to Jim's parents' house then as well.
Oh, I actually forgot about that. Yeah, especially when you read that note that the parents left.
Yeah, which, I mean, then it really sinks in, I think, for him. Oh, yeah, everybody he's ever cared about is gone.
Yeah. The scene directly following that, where I think he's looking at old pictures.
The flashback scene.
And I remember like losing my mind because I saw him using a light. There's a establishing shot where you can see the light outside of the house that he's in, and he's using a light to look through all the pictures and stuff. And I was like, oh my God, zombies are coming. I knew they were coming, but just how everything was set up, I don't know. I think overall, the movie does a good job of kind of establishing a sense of dread. And even when you figure out, oh, some bad stuff's about to happen, the movie makes you wait. And it's like, you know something about to happen, but you don't know exactly when it's going to happen. And I have a love-hate relationship with that.
Yeah, the pacing is really nice, I think partially due to that, because you're in this anticipation, dread, emotional state throughout the whole film, really.
Yeah.
And then you just have Mark getting attacked right after. So it doesn't waste too much time typically in paying off those emotions that it's putting out.
I do want to skip back just a bit to when they're at the mini mart and they actually tell Jim about what happened.
Yes.
And the description of them trying to flee, and they could see the infection making it through the crowd. And I'm really glad they did not show that, because of all the families, budget-wise, it would have been stupid insane, right? The number of extras they would. But just the fact that there's kids, there's families, and it's just going through the crowd, that would have been emotionally devastating. And that made Mark a very real character. We don't know what Selena's history is, really. Mark's this real character. We've connected to him. We can't wait to see how his arc goes. And then Snicker Snack is gone, and he's gone. And that's it. And then we move on. And it's, oh, bye, Mark.
Yeah. Like we mentioned earlier, Mark is definitively gone within just a few seconds of this scene where Jim's reminiscing about photos and memories with his family, and boom, shit goes crazy and Mark's gone.
Did he even make it a half hour in the film?
Maybe. Not likely.
Like screen time was probably 10 minutes he had, maybe?
Yeah.
Which is great and not what you expect.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it again is setting expectations / the tone of this world that Jim is now in. He's, oh shit, you messed up. Mark's gone because of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then Jim and Selena encounter Frank, the cab driver, and his daughter Hannah at the Hellfront Tower. Jim and Selena are going up all those stairs, and Selena's basically going to leave him for the zombies
Yep.
until Frank kind of pops out and is like, oh, hey. So yeah, Selena's not messing around, obviously, because she's ready to leave Jim, and she takes care of Mark very quickly. So she's a survivor.
I really
Again,
liked her little character arc, if you will.
Yeah.
It's definitely a movie. She didn't give a shit. She was living, and that's all she cared.
And you don't wonder how many people had she lost, because they mentioned they lost half the group, I think, at the mini mart, right?
Mhm.
So how many people had she seen die or had to kill to get to this point
Yeah.
after 4 weeks?
Oof. It was cool. I feel like there were several at the beginning that did a good job of establishing her as like a pure survivalist. Again, just going back to the Mark scene where it's not even like fully established that he's turning, but she reacts so fast. There's not really a moment of thought. She just goes. And I don't know. I just thought that was a really good character defining moment for her and like where she sits in all of this. And it was cool seeing how she shifts as the movie keeps going.
When we actually see who Frank is, and that was a character, an actor that I knew, I went, oh, he's going to die.
Oh, no, no.
Oh, no.
As soon as I saw that actor, I'm like, I recognize him. Oh, he's got to die. He's got to die. That's going off of The Hero of 1,000 Faces, right? The young kid, he's on this epic journey. At some point, he finds a teacher that helps teach him, and then Obi-Wan dies, just to put a nail on that one. Yeah, as soon as I saw Brendan Gleeson, I knew he was going to die. And it made me sad because his character was so good. He was a dad and he just wanted his kid to live. And here he is adopting these 2 other 20-year-olds. And I'm like, he's going to die.
As soon as he unmasked, you felt that way?
As soon as he unmasked, I recognize him. And then as soon as he started talking in the apartment after Hannah had actually let him in, I'm like, oh, I do know that. Wait, I actually recognize this actor. Oh, he's going to die. Yeah, that went through my head. And then I was sad for the rest of the movie the first time I watched it. Yeah. Anyways, I also thought Hannah was going to die, to be honest. And I'm pleasantly surprised that didn't happen. There are other characters that I thought were going to live later, but he was the one. I saw him and I knew he was going to die. How in the heck, with that tiny budget, they actually got a named actor on there? They actually got a couple, but he was the one that stood out.
I believe, and actually, real quick, is it Cillian or Killian?
I think it's Killian.
I think it's Killian. I've mispronounced it for years until very recently. So I probably have said it wrong multiple times on this podcast already.
So Killian. I believe that was one of Killian's like first major projects. I don't think it was his first film, but his first like film that made a significant amount of money for sure.
He's a good looking guy. I'm just going to straight up say this. He, like the way he's aged, man, wow, dang.
He's 47.
Oh yeah, he was in Oppenheimer. Oh,
Yeah.
I still have to see that movie.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Oh, that's really good.
Yeah,
Definitely gotta see that.
Peaky Blinders. He was in A Quiet Place too. I thought I watched that movie. Yeah,
He has a beard in that film, so maybe that's why I didn't recognize him, because he's usually clean shaven. But he
Yeah,
had a beard
I
in
was
A
going to
Quiet Place
say that
too.
about this movie. I was like, you look so weird with facial hair. Shave it off. And then thankfully they gave me a scene where he then shaved it off.
But yeah, no, Cillian Murphy's aged like fine wine so far. And he's such a phenomenal actor. Like you said, Mark, Peaky Blinders. And I feel like everything he's in, it makes me strongly consider watching the film. So that's why I was like, oh, 28 Days Later, I got to watch it. It's on my watch list because it's Cillian Murphy.
In any of his films from before 28 Days Later, I've never even heard of them. But then Cold Mountain, Batman Begins, Sunshine, The Dark Knight, Inception, Tron Legacy, like a third of his movies I think I've seen, but they're all after 28 Days Later.
Yeah.
So I really think that movie is what made his career, or at least started it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is cool that they decided to give this not very well-known actor at the time the leading role in the film. This guy's super talented. Let's have him be our Jim.
Yeah, he's perfect.
Oh, yeah. So at the tower, they learn of the military broadcast, which is offering protection at a blockade in Manchester. And with supplies dwindling, Frank asks Jim and Selena to accompany him and Hannah to the blockade, and they do accept that invitation. The whole journey to the blockade, I personally really enjoyed, whether it was the scene where he guns it, goes into that tunnel, and they got the flat tire.
Oh,
And the
man. I had,
rats.
Oh, the rats.
Oh.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had so much anxiety during that. I had so much anxiety. I was like,
And Jim's
why?
like, this is a shit idea, guys. This is
Yeah, that was on Jim's boat, man. I was like, why are we doing this? Oh, man. And then when they got the flat tire, I almost got an aneurysm.
Yes. The shopping scene. Okay, going into the music. That's where they have a poppy, just cheerful as song going on. Rewatching it again years later after the first time, I'm like, I'm all happy for them because here they are, the safe spot, and they're getting food. And how great is that? And then they leave, and you're like, and it's only going to get worse for these poor bastards. But again, effective use of music, because that scene is so unlike the entire rest of the film. Having that poppy, happy music made it and safe.
Contrast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Definitely contrasting. And you have those little human moments that populate more in that market scene where I think Jim's selecting some alcohol and Frank's, oh, hey, if you like that, this is the good stuff right here.
The bottle of scotch. Grab the 24-year-old because come on, man. It's the end of the world.
I wanted to take a moment to thank our Cinema Club supporters. Your monthly contributions are appreciated and help keep the show running and growing, as it definitely does take a few software and editing subscriptions on Nick and I's end to create these episodes. If you love the show and would be interested in financially supporting the Cinema Club for even 99 cents a month, visit our website and click the Support This Podcast button. You can check that out at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/the Cinema Club. Let's jump back into the episode.
Jim decides to go and look inside the restaurant. Dude, I don't know why. Let's knock on the door and see who's inside. Any monsters? What is important about that scene, though, is he finds a zombie and it's a small child and he kills it. But apparently the child says, I hate you, before he kills it. It sounds like the kid's growling. It might have been, I hate you. It might have just been,
I didn't pick that one up. That's interesting, though.
yeah. So I don't know if it really is or isn't. Again, I'm going to have to watch it again. I'll probably have to turn the volume up way too loud and annoy my family. But
Put some subtitles on.
some people say the kid says, I hate you. And some people disagree with that. That's actually something for the next film, 28 Weeks Later. That's a little bit touched on in that film. But in general, the zombies, as we'll find out a little bit later, are non-communicative. They're very reactionary versus doing things proactive.
And actually, just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on 28 Weeks Later? Is it just as good as 28 Days? Or does it improve upon it?
There are things about the film I absolutely like. There are aspects in that film which are great. I don't think the film's good enough to deserve its own hour and a half long episode like we normally do. I think maybe it deserves a half hour, but there are some things they did that was really good. And there's a couple things they did that I would rather talk later, honestly.
Fair enough.
Okay. I was also curious about that, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, the zombie kid at the gas station definitely was creepy. I think maybe this is a me thing, but kids being zombies always another
Chilling.
level of disturbing.
Yeah, it's chilling.
It really is.
I think this scene might be why in the beginning of the Walking Dead TV series, you see the little girl and Rick caps the little girl zombie.
Yes. I haven't watched that season 1 since I was a teenager, and I still remember it because it was disturbing,
Yeah.
creepy.
But again, this film influencing later stuff.
Yeah, because as far as child zombies, was that really a thing to your knowledge beforehand?
If there was, and I might be thinking about other films, it was like you would see a zombie shuffling down, holding a bundle. But like anybody not teenager aged or sized, anything smaller than that, I cannot remember a film prior to this that did it. I mean, heck, Resident Evil had zombie dogs, right?
Nothing very prominently
No.
brought to the center of attention in a film. Because yeah, I mean, it might be
Afterwards.
one of those like taboo things maybe in the film industry beforehand, where it's like, oh yeah, we don't really want to touch that.
Afterwards, totally different conversation, dude. So many zombie babies, zombie kids, zombie everything. That's a really good catch. I think about that one.
Yeah, I was curious because, like I said, it always creeps me the hell out.
It's the only one we see, right?
Yeah.
Like there is a dead baby in the burger place, the gas station. I remember that.
Do you want to talk about that whole campfire stop where they're sleeping?
It was a nice touching moment. Jim having the nightmare that he's been abandoned. You completely understand where it comes from. And you have that moment of not knowing if it's a nightmare or if it's real. Finding out that Selena's a pharmacist with a bag full of drugs. Because come on, man, it's the end of the world. You might as well bring antibiotics and sleep aids and suicide pills. So what else you got going? And that's very important for later in the film.
That's true.
But that was a nice scene. It wasn't as lighthearted as the grocery store, but it was nice to see them being
Bonding.
a family.
Great way to put it, Mark.
And then the barricade, because they've been following a radio signal. It's the only radio signal they can find. And they left London, obviously because bad, but there wasn't any water. So they had to leave London. They teamed up because none of them would have survived on their own, right? Frank couldn't have kept his daughter alive, and the two of them didn't have wheels or transportation. So they make it to the barricade. They follow this radio signal, and they get there, and barricade's damaged, destroyed. I mean, there's burned out armored vehicles. So there's nobody there. And Frank loses his shit. And it felt very honest for the character because he was really hoping that there was a military presence that would save his daughter.
This was a moment where all of his hope was placed into this thing being something. And you saw him come to the realization that this hope wasn't what he thought it was. And it was so hard. Oh, man. I feel like this is like the official start of the final act of the movie. And I feel from the point they make it to the barricade to the end of the movie, the pace just goes so fast. And we haven't talked about it yet, but that pace starts the second the blood drops on his eye. And from that point on, we're just speeding through the last act of the movie in terms of pace.
Oh, yeah, but they disguised it, right? The next scene, it seems good. It seems positive. Oh, no, Frank died, but we've been saved, right?
Yep. Man, I don't know. It was just my intuition or something. I did not trust him at all.
One thing I did like about that scene, which I don't think a lot of people peg on, is the crow doesn't get infected. So while we don't see dogs, dogs will be going feral and dogs will be eating the meat that's lying around and fighting the infected. We don't see any of that. This crow is eating a dead body that's infected and not going psychotic. And I think that's important. Humankind was basically just erasing itself. And that's it.
That's a good point, Mark. Because, yeah, like you said, the worlds in which these zombie apocalypse events occur all differ so much. In this case, it was spread by a primate in a lab to humans, but it isn't affecting, at least, any birds. And I do find it interesting that we have that very dramatized drop of blood falling into Frank's eye, and then a very human moment where he's internally, I got like 25 seconds left. And if I remember correctly, he chooses to apologize to his daughter and tell her that he very much loves and cares about her in that time. And then he tries to separate himself.
Dude, those last like few seconds are so painful. Because you, as the audience member, know what he's doing. He's getting his last words out and then immediately trying to separate himself. And I was, oh my God, I don't know. It just hit me right in the heart. I was like, oh, this is so sad.
And we have the scene where he's yelling at them to get away. He's twitching. And the dread, because here's this good, happy father person who's done his best for his now impromptu family and real family. And now he's going to become one of the monsters. And then Selena grabbing Hannah, yelling at Jim to kill him, and Jim not being able to. And at the time I was like, oh, Jim, you pussy, right? All things considered, I'm very happy Jim couldn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. I would like to think that as Frank was charging them, Jim would have acted just like when the kid attacked him, but not running up and killing somebody as they're turning. But seeing what happened to Frank, I don't know if Mark was actually infected, because Frank was starting to twitch and yelling, and you could tell he was losing control, and Mark's just wiping his arms. I think Mark might not have been.
I got to rewatch the film.
You got me thinking about it now.
I definitely remember how I perceived the scene was a foregone conclusion. And I feel like the movie pushed me into that camp
Yeah,
because
definitely.
he died. But now I want to see if there are actually any indications of like he was raging out or not. Because if not, then it's, man, this thing's a little different now.
It makes Selena much more interesting because there she was willing to kill somebody who she'd been a companion with and surviving with on the possibility of him being sick, right? And here we see Frank and she's not the one attacking.
Yeah.
And I think at that point she started to actually care for the family, which is obvious
Yeah.
a little bit later on. And because she was not emotionally invested in anybody until I think basically the camping scene.
Yeah, I think Mark made a really good point too that our character Jim is still someone who is very violence avoidant at this point in the storyline, even when it comes to protecting Selena and Hannah.
And I think that's very important for the rest of the story that he be that way. And I'm really glad that's the way they did it because it made what happens later much more impactful.
Absolutely, 100%. And then, yeah, so the soldiers arrive or come out of hiding. I can't remember which.
I think they were en route.
Okay, so they did arrive, I guess, afterwards. And they take out Frank. And then they go back to that fortified mansion under Commander Major Henry West. And we're just getting introduced to the fortified mansion. Got some interesting characters at the mansion.
I was going to say from second one, my spider sense was tingling. I just did not feel comfortable with them at all. It might have been like some little small choices they made that I picked up on or whatever. I don't know. From moment one, I did not trust them.
I think for me, it was where they're stopped, they're parked, everybody's inside the house, except there's a couple people joyriding around in the taxi, right? And that's when I went,
yeah.
these people
Yes.
have absolutely no respect for their property.
You know what? That was a big scene for me. It was
That's
the
a good
two big
point.
scenes that kind of solidified what I was already feeling was that scene with the car and then the scene where he introduced the zombie that they were keeping.
I love that scene.
Oh man. I was like, oh, these people are effed up. I don't like it.
Okay. Christopher Eccleston, right? Who was later, after this, the first Doctor Who when they remade the Who. And apparently he had a shitty experience with that, with the producers and
really?
stuff. I got to see him, I want to say last year at Phoenix Fan Fest. Unfortunately, I was not able to ask him my 28 Days Later question because the person in front of me got the last question. I was very sad about that. But yeah, he's cool. He's a great character. He was one of the ones where I knew his face and I was like, wait, I actually recognize this actor. He's probably going to die too. But I wasn't sure because I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. But yeah, he's a great actor. He's very successful. This is one of the films that actually made him known internationally versus just in the UK. I think the actor did an outstanding job. In fact, I think all of the soldiers were great.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I think that keeping, I can't remember the private's name, on a chain from a scientific point of view, I 100% agree with. You've neutralized the enemy. And now we're going to see what happens to him because nobody has any information because in less than a month, an entire country is wiped out. So from a scientific point of view, I think that's 100% correct. From a humanitarian point of view, dude, that ain't cool.
Yeah.
All of those cheesy scenes where people say, if it's going to die, shoot me. And that's why.
There's definitely those inklings that we get as audience members of, oh, like, there's weird stuff going on for sure. Then West reveals to Jim that the podcast was intended to lure female survivors into sexual slavery. So then I guess repopulate the world is how they're justifying it somehow. And like they're fucked
It's
up
so
way.
dark.
Yeah. Oh, I know. So fucked. And it's also interesting though, that tidbit that West is convinced that the virus has overrun the entire planet. That's his viewpoint, which up until this point, that really hasn't been something that characters have talked about too much.
About or cared. It's more important to find some food. It's more important to get to the blockade. They've had these priorities and who cares what's happening in France, really?
Right.
What about me? What about tomorrow?
Yeah.
Adam, I like you, dude. Zombie apocalypse happens. I'm not going to call and check on you. Oh, you're on the wrong side of the planet for me to help, dude.
I'll probably
But yeah-
remember to check in on me as I'm
Thanks.
running away.
Send a
Appreciate
quick text. Hey man, the towers haven't been compromised yet. You hanging out?
That's because the towers spread the virus, right?
I do always find it super interesting when, whether it's reading books or watching film, just to witness how quickly society collapses and how the most depraved people somehow are always in a weird power structure situation. Which, by the way, shout out to that one soldier that stood up
The sergeant.
against everybody else. Yes.
When,
stood up.
when the betrayal happened, Jim takes a rifle butt to the face. The women are restrained after the machete's taken away. The sergeant's trying to keep them from being awful, horrible people. And the commanders take him. And that's it. That was something for when we talk about the sequel. I have feelings about this scene. And I think it was very well done. It's just another crushing defeat on Jim. Just another one. Things look better, and it's not. Things look better, and it's a betrayal. There's no other way to put it. It is a betrayal. Jim and the sergeant is dragged out to be killed the next day. The girls are given dresses and told to get pretty. The sergeant is killed. Jim manages to escape. And instead of the two soldiers that were sent out to kill them, chasing him and hunting him down, I think the statement is, he's out there, he hasn't got a gun, he's dead. And that kind of leads to when it gets really exciting.
This is a fault on me. I probably should have just rewinded it and tried to see what happened. There's like a 2-3 second sliver of time where they're out there in the forest and a split second thing happens where it looks like they're about to kill the other guy, and they do kill him. But I missed what happened to why they couldn't kill Jim in the next moment. I was confused.
To be rude, I'm going to skip back just a second and come back to you. The important thing about the sergeant as well was the sergeant was discussing the fact that the island was quarantined. And we can't skip that because I think that's very important because it went from the world ending to fuck England.
Yeah,
Right?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And that's a really important thing. So they take him out. I cannot remember the two guys' names. One's the dopey cook guy and one's the asshole.
Yeah.
And the sergeant's talking smack. Well, you're going to kill your sergeant? Really? You're going to kill your sergeant? And the asshole puts the bayonet on the rifle to stab him. And they take him out to where they've been stacking all the bodies. Okay. So there's a bunch of dead bodies laying around, which really, if I'd seen that earlier, I would have been like, oh, these are the bad guys. And they're not even bothering to burn the bodies. So when the asshole goes to stab the sergeant, the cook shoots the sergeant.
Okay.
Which a 5.56 round going off behind you really hurts your ears. It hurts if you're behind the gun, right? So it's incredibly loud. And in that moment, Jim hides in the pile of corpses.
Okay. So that's good to know. That's what I thought happened, but it happened so fast that I actually wasn't certain what happened. That checks out.
Running off barefoot and wearing a pair of pants, and that's it. Who knows where? That's when they find the shirt and they go, he's over the wire. She's out there. He hasn't got a gun. He's dead.
I was going to mention too, I believe Jim also sees like a jet chemtrail while he's hiding with the bodies. So us as the viewing audience, the first time we're shown proof of outside survivors in the film as well.
Technology survivors. Keeping a jet aircraft running is not a simple thing.
Gonna have runway to get on and off.
You have to have the fuel. The fuel has to be maintained. You have to have the people that keep the aircraft running because aircraft fall out of the sky if they're not maintained. He sees the airplane, which is going to be important later because everything was fucked at that point. They thought the world had ended. They thought the entire world was like this. The sergeant saying the quarantine was happening, then seeing the airplane kind of means there might be something else out there.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Back at the mansion, the girls are being dragged up and they're asked to change into pretty clothes. Selena negotiates the opportunity for the two of them to get changed into nice outfits on their own. The fact that Hannah's a minor makes this even incredibly more creepy. Selena doesn't want to suicide pill Hannah, but it's drugs so Hannah won't care. And then the soldiers bust in, seeing what's going on, and stops that.
Yeah, which is an interesting development with Selena's character, because from the start of the movie, I think that she would be chugging those pills to numb herself, but her priority is to get Hannah some of those pills to help Hannah. again, it's a small moment, but I really love Selena's background character arc that again is really nicely showcased, I think,
Yeah, I just
in
feel like
that
it's big
moment.
because it feels like her primary motive is to stay alive. And as the movie goes on and she creates a bond with these strangers, it doesn't become the primary driving force for her, actually. Because it's just so crazy how fast she just kills this person that she's introduced with. It's, oh, they must have some type of relationship. And without thought, just murders him. And it's nice to see her transition to someone who cares about her relationships and is just trying to do her best to, obviously it's an awful situation that they're in. And she's just thinking about not necessarily survival, but this person that she's now considering family, just trying to make the best of this truly dreadful situation.
Yeah, again, she previously had that better than me mindset, which has been completely reversed when it comes to her viewpoint on Jim and Hannah, the two people that she's really grown attached to and cares so much about. And yeah, then we have Jim luring West away from the mansion,
He goes to the barricade and starts pulling an air raid siren.
Yeah, the alarm. He
which smart.
murks a guy and then leaves.
That is the best way to put it. He totally murks that dude. Again, lead pipe to the noggin. Wow. Just, which again, he hasn't been violent this whole film, except when he's actively attacked. And here he goes. Then the major freaks out because he finds this dude dead. They're shooting. Zombies show up, but the major then, after shooting up some place, trying to find and not being able to find Jim, runs back to the mansion. And Jim is able to pick up the assault rifle from the soldier he killed.
Yeah, and then there's that whole storm. I feel like it's, again, crescendoing the emotional aspect of what's going on in the film with this storm that's starting to brew earlier on, and then it's in full force. But by the time Jim arrives at the mansion, he's releasing that infected soldier that was chained up for observations.
Waiting for the lightning and thunder to shoot, so it's not as obvious. And then hopping back into music, I think honestly the single best song in the damn movie is played through this section. And it just ramps up, dude. The song just makes you tense and it keeps building. So Jim comes, releases the infected, starts rampaging through. He has somehow made it there before the major did. And then the infected starts killing people and infecting them and chasing people around. The asshole soldier grabs Selena and is dragging her upstairs. What was that quote? You and I are going to find a safe little fucking place. God, the actor did a good job.
That's so disturbing.
I
Yeah.
hated him so much. Hannah's managed to escape. She's gone and taken some pills, so she's now drugged and happy.
Yeah.
And the defense of the mansion falls apart in minutes. That's an awesome building. But we have these great shots of soldiers and Jim hiding from each other and hiding from the infected. And slowly there's more and more infected. Jim, with a bayonet, kills the cook,
Yeah.
which I think was awesome. And then goes in search of the girls. This is a very stressful, very action-orientated. Jim's killing people.
Yeah.
The major makes it back in time to catch the final dying breaths of the cook. And Jim finds one of the soldiers who's out of ammunition that's hiding underneath a bed. And the zombies start breaking down the door. And Jim goes out on the roof, leaving the soldier
yeah.
behind. He's like, oh, every bullets don't leave me. That guy deserves to die like a bitch.
No,
Did.
for real. I was like, you deserve this death. We are in the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, I don't feel bad about any of the soldiers' deaths, honestly.
Nah, not really. Especially when you think about like their motives and like what they were up to. Once you realize that, I feel like you don't have any more sympathy for them.
On
I
the
was definitely
ceiling.
rooting for the chain zombie.
Yes, and him running around and chasing people and people hiding and then dying. And yeah, it was good. One of the other soldiers that gets turned, the one who stopped Selena from giving Hannah the drugs, I got to say, once he turned to a zombie, he did a really good job. The camera was on him a lot. He was very believable. It was good. And it very much brought home how this person, who is not a nice person, but now he's a deadly monster. I think that was good. But Jim's on the roof. Asshole guy and Selena are up in the attic. We can tell somebody's on the roof because dust is dropping down. Jim comes in during a lightning strike nearby, beats the ever-living shit out of the asshole, and puts the dude's eyes out with his thumb.
Man, that was so brutal. And I
was
feel like
graphic.
that was perfect. I feel like the movie was a slow crescendo of the violence that Jim was getting involved in. And I guess that's a nice peak of the crescendo because, man, that was one of the most brutal things ever. There's just something, I don't know, it just makes me feel so, I can't even explain it, uncomfortable. Is the of someone like pushing their fingers into your eyes. Man,
Eye violence is nasty stuff for sure. I
But
agree with you.
the same thing, well, it makes you uncomfortable. Part of what makes you uncomfortable is because you actually were satisfied by it because of every single person that deserved to die like that, it was that guy.
yeah.
If anybody deserved to have a horrible, awful, scarring the audience death, it was him.
This is a video game reference. It felt like I was reliving playing the God of War games,
Oh,
killing all
yeah.
the gods in like the most gruesome ways ever.
I actually haven't played those games. And people judge me when I say that. And I agree. I understand.
No, that's awesome. Just the opportunity to play it and have a new experience because it's a great game. Highly.
Yeah, they're both awesome games. Highly recommend them.
Wait, hold on. Both?
Yeah, one and two.
They came out with a sequel. What was it, like 2 years ago?
A little bit more than that. But yeah, he goes to go kill all the Norse gods.
No, there's 5
Wait.
main.
Oh, I haven't played the 3 older ones.
Yeah, wait, he goes against the Greek gods? It's
My
fine.
bad. My
It's
bad, Adam.
10
It's fine.
games.
It's fine. Yeah, if you count mobile games and other stuff, it's definitely more.
I thought it was just
PlayStation.
Greek and Norse. Sorry, I thought it was just those
yeah,
two.
no, there's more.
Oh.
And in the next couple years, they're gonna go Egyptian, from my understanding. So
Ooh, I gotta play these.
they're so good.
At least play the 2 most recent ones. Those are the only ones I've played, but
Ragnarok.
Play all 5. They're great.
Okay.
worth the time.
Sorry for the.
No, you're
No,
totally
no.
good.
After he brutally kills the dude, he's covered in blood and he runs at Selena. And
Oh.
we know he's not psycho, but honestly,
Yeah.
after what
No.
he just did,
That scene was so good when you have the other scene at the beginning of the movie to compare it to, and how we have a situation. And actually, it makes more sense that it's not clear there because we have another situation where it is not clear. And I remember I was like, oh my God, maybe she didn't have any character development. She's going to murder him.
yeah, but I gotta be honest, after watching the way that Jim kills him, if she killed him, I would have been like, she's probably a smart person.
No, I know. The situation was actually primed for her. to just
Yeah.
do what she did in the past. And the fact that she
Yeah.
handled it differently, I thought was another example of her
Yeah.
changing as a character.
Yes.
Because if that was the same character from like the first 30 minutes,
Oh.
Jim was dead.
Dead. Yeah.
100%.
And then the kiss.
Yeah.
Even I was like, oh. And then Hannah runs up and smacks him in the back of the head, which is great.
Yeah.
But that was such a great scene. Again, you can see the character development. I thought he was dead. I seriously thought she was going to snack him because he just poked a dude's eyes.
You just killed this guy in the most brutal way possible.
And he's covered
You
in
are
blood.
clearly
Jim, Selena, and Hannah are attempting to leave for Frank's cab, and then West, who he snuck out the back into the back seat of the cab, he shoots Jim, and then Hannah retaliates. That allows the
Chained up zombie.
chained up zombie, to pull West through the rear window and kill him while our 3 main characters drive away.
With Jim being shot.
Yes.
oh yeah.
Jim is shot, which then
Which-
leads to them making it to a hospital. And it's unclear if they save his life. And then we get the ending of the movie.
I find it super interesting that this movie is unavailable on any streaming platform. It's
Yes.
super unavailable. And I found out the reason why. It was owned by Disney.
Yeah, they
Wait,
lost the
what?
distribution rights.
They lost distribution rights, and it's now owned by.
I think Sony Pictures acquired it this
Yeah.
year.
And so there's no streaming platform that can show it. And I guess 28 weeks later is a film you can still find on streaming services, but that's because it's still owned by Searchlight.
Hopefully we get at least some more physical reprints of 28 Days Later, because it was hard
Yeah.
to track down this film.
I had
Yeah,
to
you-
find it on like
you can buy
Daily
it on
Motion.
Amazon. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. It's super interesting how unavailable this movie was. But that kind of brings me to the format that I had to watch it on. It was a random UK website called Daily Motion.
That's when I watched on too.
And it had a really bizarre out of audio sync alternate ending to the film. And
Yeah.
did you watch that?
I watched that too. Yeah, yeah, it was interesting.
Okay. I think I know what it is. On the DVD and Blu-ray, you can actually watch a couple of their ideas on alternate endings. They actually filmed one. But what was the one you guys got?
It was just one ending where Jim actually dies in the hospital.
Remember we were talking about lack of character armor?
Yeah.
And dies, dude.
I thought it was interesting. This was a movie with multiple endings because the more hopeful ending is the official ending.
Jim survives. They get found by the military. They have the giant SOS sign that they made out of all the sheets. The three of them are definitely alive at the end of the film in the theatrical release and the standard release that's on the DVD and Blu-rays.
Maybe it's just like the artist in me that's just leaving the options open. I was just really happy to see that they had these alternate endings that was a lot more dark and not as hopeful. I just appreciated the courage to have an ending like that. Even though it's not the official ending, it's already a horror movie. But to go all the way and have a kind of more dark ending, I just appreciated it.
If you actually look at the real ending versus that version, basically the only difference is that in the scene where the airplane flies over and they're on the SOS and they're hopping up and waving their arms, the one where the girls live, there's no Jim. The one where Jim lives, he's there. So really, it's just a one-shot difference. And they filmed it, because they didn't know they filmed it with Jim, they filmed it without. And I appreciate that.
If you happen to know, Mark, what other endings did they have?
They had a partial storyboard for one, and it's the writer and the director talking about it, where basically they escape again, and they find a bunker, and there's an uninfected guy in the bunker, and they end up getting inside the bunker, but one of them gets infected. I don't remember who. I think it's Selena. The guy inside this giant medical facility underground says that he can cure Selena by doing a complete blood swap with somebody. So Jim volunteers and is blood swapped. And then the three of them, the doctor, Hannah, and Selena, escape. And the closing scene is Jim tied to a table with monitors in front of him, and it panned out.
Oh, wow.
So basically the ape scene in the beginning in reverse.
Okay.
And it's been a while since I watched that one, but they said something like there was no budget for them to do that. So they're like, that's a great idea. Never mind.
Okay. Yeah, so many different directions they could have taken with
and I
it. But yeah,
appreciate
it is
the
interesting.
two options they did film. I do appreciate both of those.
100%. And you saw this film in the theater, Mark.
Yeah, back in 2002.
I specifically remember when that movie came out. I was very scared of horror movies at the time, and I couldn't watch that movie when it came out.
I had to look up Resident Evil and 28 Days Later. I know they came out right around each other. Turns out Resident Evil was 7 months earlier, right? Something like that.
Yeah. I will say, I do think 28 Days Later had a bigger impact on zombie.
The Res Evil film was a financial success, which a lot of video game movies weren't.
It was the
game
first
movies made that sucked.
Yeah.
And honestly, between the two of them, I think 28 Days Later actually did more for revitalizing the genre. But Res Evil definitely had its spot. And I think if both of those films had not come out the same year and both of them had not been commercial successes, with 28 Days Later being an insanely successful compared to its budget, I don't know if the zombie resurgence would have happened if it wasn't for both of those things happening.
Which I feel like we're on the tail end maybe of that resurgence in 2024.
The pandemic zombie stuff, right? Because here we are and it's day to day and you might get sick and die, right? And I got friends who did, and I got friends who are permanently fucked up from COVID, right? People younger than me that have to use walkers, okay? There was a brief spot of zombie stuff coming in right around then. Okay. I think it was pretty much died out by 2020, to be honest.
Yeah, because it's like, why would you put money into producing something that you may be living?
Yeah.
Honestly. Still do have a lot of quality stuff coming out, though. Like the Last of Us TV show, that's top shelf storyline right there. Super excited for season 2 and 3 of that to come out. So there is still good quality zombie content being released. Maybe it just isn't quantity wise as much as it was a few years ago.
The Girl with All the Gifts, that's an outstanding one.
Okay, it's on my watch list too. Okay, I'll have to check it out then if you like it.
There's going to be a lot of similarities in background concept with The Last of Us because it's a fungus.
Oh, it is. Okay, cool.
It's a fungus thing.
Interesting.
I read it and I watched it. I think both of them are good. I'm definitely glad I read it, but I'm definitely glad I watched it. Heck, even Stephen King had a zombie film called The Cell. It was about cell phones causing people to go berserk psychotic.
Oh, okay.
Man, it started great. And then it went like all Stephen King films and books and just died a sad, whimpery death of suckiness. On the other hand, the movie had Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack in it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it's a pisser because it starts off so good. Books, The Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks, World War Z by Max Brooks.
Yeah.
The audiobook of World War Z, I cannot recommend enough. It is outstanding because World War Z is a collection of people recounting their stories, and each chapter is a different person. Mark Hamill's a soldier, and hearing Luke Skywalker say, "Man, we were so fucked," best thing ever. It is probably the single best audiobook I've ever listened to. Day by Day Armageddon by J.L. Bourne. It's a Navy pilot writing a journal of the zombie apocalypse, and plague starts in China, right? It's very readable, very good. I don't necessarily agree with the guy's politics, but he writes good stuff, and it is one of the best zombie survival books I've ever read.
Wow. What's it called again?
Day by Day Armageddon by J.L. Bourne.
Okay, check it out.
But I mean, you guys should definitely look through the Zombie Survival Guide. It's hysterical. It's great. It's a basic survival guide with zombies. And World War Z is, again, the audiobook. Cannot recommend that enough. Film-wise, Shaun of the Dead. Okay, let's talk about Shaun of the Dead real quick. They even make a joke about, in the end, that it turns out the zombie virus was not caused by monkeys. Very end. And they talk about how it wasn't caused by a satellite crashing, which is what the possible cause was in the original Night of the Living Dead.
Okay.
Because you hear about it on the radio on their way to the graveyard in the beginning of the film. And I really appreciate it. And if it hadn't been for this resurgence in films, we never would have had Shaun of the Dead, which means we wouldn't have Simon Pegg or Hot Fuzz or any of those films, because that literally launched their career. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think 28 Days Later is, for the genre, such an incredibly important film, is because it reignited an entire genre that was basically gone by the 80s.
Yeah. I'm sure there existed. There just was a lot of zombie movies in the 90s.
90?
I think you're right.
And then
there had to have been at least one of the Return of the Living Deads, like number 4 or 5, right? Which the first Return of the Living Dead, that's where the term brains came from. That movie brought an entire term into popular pop culture.
That's too funny. To be transparent with you both, I haven't explored the movieverse of zombie films very much. For me, growing up as a teenager and more earlier 20s, it was mostly the Walking Dead content, whether that was like the spin-off shows or the main show. That was my zombie thing. So now that main show has ended, finally, it's cool getting to, like with this film, backtrack a little bit and explore other stories that have to do with zombies, because it really has been The Walking Dead and then The Last of Us, which are my two primary. Like,
have you watched Shaun of the Dead?
I haven't.
No.
I'm judging you right now. Have you?
I was going to say Zombie Land.
Yes, I did watch those.
I like Zombieland. It's a comedy, which was well done. It's definitely not a horror film, though. And the second one is just so damn weird, right? I appreciate it because it's weird, but damn, it's a weird film.
They definitely took chances. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. Didn't always land, but you can appreciate.
Did you see the TV show?
No.
I think they only made 6 episodes before they gave it a mercy killing.
Oh, no.
I couldn't even make it through the first episode. I'm like, nah, fuck it. I got better things to do with my time.
That bad.
Because it's not the actors. It's just people playing those roles.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't either. It came
I think
out.
they probably tried to bury it.
Wow, it came out almost a decade ago.
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of random people playing all these characters.
How many episodes was it? Okay, no, gotta look this
This
up.
might be really
Sorry.
bad. Hold on. It has one episode and
Yes.
only one. Only a pilot was produced for the series as it was
Oh.
not picked up for a season run.
And they're
Yeah.
calling it a TV movie. Wow.
Big yikes.
Not everything works out.
Black Summer, the Netflix TV show, was outstanding. The problem is, it's supposed to be a spinoff of Z Nation, which I couldn't get through Z Nation. But Black Summer is an outstanding one. And one of the things that works about Black Summer is it's basically 5 people's journeys. And the episode will start with Bob, and you'll see Bob going through his day, and he'll cross paths with Janet. Okay. And then Bob will keep going on his day. And the later episode, it's Janet, and you see her cross paths with Bob and what's happening to her. It was good, where you have 3 different groups fighting each other, shooting each other and stuff. It's confusing. But by the time you've gone through this multiple episodes of this fight, because it's from different point of views, you understand what's going on. And it's actually a very enjoyable experience. And they only made 2 seasons.
I think I did try the first season when it first came out, and I just couldn't get into it. However, it's a South Korean like horror series in the
Train to
60s.
Busan.
Train to Busan's really good. Kingdom was a Netflix show.
Okay.
It's like South Korean horror in the 17th century with zombies. Only watched season 1, but that was really good. Train to Busan, that's excellent. I think they made a sequel to that.
Peninsula.
Is it
It's
any good?
okay. I don't think it's as good as Train to Busan, but there's very few films that I think the second one is better than the first. Empire, Road Warrior. Peninsula was enjoyable. We're All Gonna Die Here, I think, is the South Korean live action version of High School of the Dead, which is a Japanese anime. So much zombie stuff came out. So much came out. Some of it's really good. Some of it's crap. There was a remake of Day of the Dead that was just not good. Romero came out and put out a couple more films. And it was nice because, like, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead. Diary of the Dead sucks, I'm not going to lie, but it was the first one of his films that had a character that appeared in a previous film show up in it. As in, the character of this guy from this film is that character in the next film. Other than that, he's never done that before.
And what about, Mark, your thoughts on the sequel to 28 Days Later?
So I think in general, the film is well done. Okay. 28 weeks later is very cool. There's always going to be people immune to diseases, right?
And as for a mild spoiler,
Yeah, go for it.
are we dealing with any of the same characters from the first movie?
No.
Ugh, that's fine. I'm over it.
There
That's fine.
was a comic book. I got the first trade paperback 28 days later, where Selena is hired to go back in country to retrieve something. And I read the first trade paperback and I never bothered to pick up the second. I don't even know if there was a second. It
Jeez.
wasn't bad, but I'm like,
Okay.
why would you do that to yourself, girl? And she wasn't dating Jim or anything. It was very,
Weird.
I didn't understand it. Which 28 weeks later, all the zombies have died. Okay. They starved to death. They died. They don't know how to make food. They don't have hygiene. They don't do all these things. So
Okay.
the U.S. military stepped in and they've resecured London, parts of it. They're still exploring and searching things. And they decide to start bringing back all the British and making them live in their own country again. Because, like the Jews post-Holocaust, let's go ahead and kick them out and send them somewhere else. Okay. My problems with the film is it is a blatant, screaming political message about the U.S. military. Because at the time it was made, the U.S. had invaded Iraq for the second time and had claimed victory. There was no plan what to do with Iraq once we won it. They'd claimed victory. And this film was very much set and implied to me as a veteran, it was very hypercritical of the U.S. military. Whether or not we deserve it, that's besides the point. But taking the first film and how the soldiers all go evil, think they don't like the military. And that did leave a bad taste in my mouth. Okay. What happens is that a survivor is found. Now, the beginning of the movie, we have a couple survivors living in a house. And a child comes to the house and they let the child in because it's a kid that's not infected. Unfortunately, the kid was being hunted. The house gets overran by the infected. A husband and wife try to escape. The wife tries to save the kid. The husband runs for it. He sees the wife get attacked in the window and go off screen, and he manages to survive by running away. Robert Carlyle is that character. So the U.S. has come reoccupied. They're still clearing out parts of the city. Robert Carlyle Dawn is a caretaker. He's basically working for the U.S. government. The U.S. military finds a house with a survivor in it, and it's a woman, and she's covered in healed bite marks. And it turns out it's Robert Carlyle's wife. She is naturally immune. Also Typhoid Mary. So the government secures her. Nobody knows she exists. Dawn accidentally finds her, goes in, finds his wife. My God, you're alive. Kisses her, gets infected, goes nuts. He starts the plague.
Oh, shit.
Okay. And unfortunately, the wife dies. But it turns out, and it's great because Jeremy Renner's in it. He's a sniper.
Okay.
Things are set on fire. But what's cool is Robert Carlyle, Dawn, he's infected, but he's intelligent. He actually hides behind a building when a road gets napalmed.
Involved a little bit.
His kids. Okay, so remember the little kid that said, I hate you?
Interesting.
Maybe they have 120 IQ and they're only running on 60, but they're running on 60. Jeremy Renner's character dies horribly and pointlessly. The three kids, older brother, older sister, younger kid, is bit but immune. The three of them managed to make it to a helicopter of the best friend of Jeremy Renner's character. I think the character's called Len. They flee the UK. And that's the end of the movie.
Okay.
Some of the credits. And then there's a stinger. And you see a crashed helicopter inside of the Eiffel Tower and radio reports of them being overrun. So they make it to Paris, apparently. They crash. People come to recover the helicopter. And if the kid's bleeding, somebody gets blood on them. And boom, we restart the film. That's how they leave 28 weeks later. I enjoyed it. I really did. It was the heavy-handedness of the anti-U.S. military that bothered me.
It just smacks you in the mouth.
Yeah, it was.
Gotcha.
And watching it the second time, I was like, man, they didn't even try to conceal how much they hate the U.S. military. And that's fine. You get to make your films. You get to tell your stories. You get to have your opinions. That, for me, is a negative. I am very much looking forward to 28 years later, because it is 28 years later, almost at this point.
Oh, sure.
It's 22 years later right now. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I know I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm going to go see it in the theater.
Officially.
Yep.
That's what they say.
No
cool.
release date or anything. That is what they say.
It was announced this year and
Oh, okay.
directed by Danny Boyle again, Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. I guess to wrap up this episode, when it comes to thoughts on 28 Days Later, the film for me, at least what I got out of it, it's a story of how the character of Jim starts out as someone who, like I was saying earlier, very violence avoidant. And then within just a few days, goes to these great violent lengths to survive and to protect the only people in this apocalyptic world that he cares about. And I thought the film's visual choice was unique / special, like the blurry / under quality lens somehow gave the whole film the feeling of a nightmare, right? So I really enjoyed that just from artistic aspect. Adam, what were your overall thoughts on the film?
Obviously, it's very fresh in my mind. A little afraid of this being recency bias. But I guess out of all the zombie movies I've seen, I definitely think it's like one of the best zombie movies I've ever seen, period. I feel I have the need to rewatch a bunch of my favorite zombie movies to see exactly where I place it. But yeah, when you take into account how small a budget this film is, I just think just such a well-made film. The ability to blow up an entire gas station and still hire good enough actors to play these pretty intense roles and, I don't know, create just a wholly entertaining storyline with a lot of twists and turns. I was just really happy with the movie. Every little basic element of filmmaking I thought was addressed, and it just made it such a great film. We didn't talk about it a lot, but the cinematography and how some shots were set up did a really good job of multiplying the dread that I was feeling. And the music, or lack thereof, there were some scenes where there was no music and kind of multiplied the stress levels. Yeah, it's just a really good zombie movie. I'm happy I watched it. It's been on my watch list for like over a decade, so I'm happy I finally got to watch it. Is there a 28 months later?
No, we were wondering, 28 weeks later, money-wise, did not do as well. But again, $8 million film, completely revitalizing a genre, makes a lot of money. The sequel to that didn't. And they had a much bigger budget, lots more name. Half the cast of 28 Weeks Later you'll recognize. I don't know. In a way, I think I'm sad it didn't do better because it's a great film in a lot of ways. But no, there was not a 28 Months Later. They didn't make enough money off for 28 weeks.
Oh, that's okay. I'm hoping the 28 years later pans out.
Especially if Cillian Murphy comes back, that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
Especially like we talked about him having so much success since 28 Days Later, to come back to this franchise all this time later would be something pretty special, especially for film lovers like Mark, who went and saw the 20 Days Later film in the movie theater when it came out.
Yeah, I even know which theater it was. It's near Grand Campbell, where the old Bookmans used to be. Before they bulldozed it, it was a theater right there. And that's where I saw it with my wife before the poor woman married me. That she would go to see zombie movies with me. Yeah, it made a dent. It made an impression. It really did. I think I've pretty much been hard on my sleeve on this one. You know exactly how I feel about this film. I seriously do believe it's the second most important zombie movie that was made. I'm not shorting Dawn of the Dead in any way, shape, or form. I'm not shorting. I love Evil Dead. I don't consider them zombie movies. Maybe the third one, right? It's just more undead. But I honestly think if it hadn't been for this film, there's a ton of actors we may not have ever known about. And there's a ton of really good zombie movies that never would have been made. And that's why I picked it.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great pick, Mark. It worked out really well that it was on Adam and I's watch list since forever. Like you're all saying, it's hard to track down to watch. So hopefully availability wise, that improves in the near future.
Yeah.
But yeah, super glad we got to break down the film, discuss it, kind of talk about our takeaways and our experiences with it. I watched it a month ago. What was my takeaway now? And then Adam, you just watched it. Mark, you have a history with this film. So I think the three of us had a lot of different views and experiences to bring with this film. So this was a great discussion. Thank you both so much.
And thank you guys for watching it. I really do appreciate it and having talked to me about it. Thanks. Adam, when are you going to pick the film?
I don't know.
We got to have Adam pick another film because you're so involved with the podcast, man. We definitely got to get you back on here with a film of your choice. So yeah, let me know. I do want to try and at least put out one episode of the podcast a month is like the base goal of the babies here. But yeah, like I said to you both in that text, I feel like the conversations the three of us have are always great. And you both bring things to the table that work really well with the conversations that we have. So appreciate you and would love to continue to talk about movies in the future with you both. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Cinema Club. If you would be interested in coming on the show in the future, please email us at thecinemaclubtcc@gmail.com. Also, if you have not yet already done so, I would encourage you to join the Cinema Club Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/thecinemaclubtcc, where we share what television series or films will be featured in upcoming episodes on the show. I'm sure you're listening to this episode on your preferred streaming platform, but I wanted to make you aware that you do have options. The Cinema Club is available on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and now YouTube as well at the Cinema Club Podcast. Please also consider giving the show a review on iTunes, as it does really help the show. And finally, we are completely supported by listeners like you. If you love the show, please consider visiting our website and clicking the Support This Podcast button. You can check that out at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/the Cinema Club. Your contribution of even 99 cents a month goes directly to maintaining and growing the Cinema Club podcast. Thank you so much to those of you who already financially do support the Cinema Club, and we will catch you on the next one.